All right. Well, good morning again. For those of you I have not met, my name is Dan Samuels. I am the Director of Philanthropy at Second Harvest Food Bank of Central Florida. And we are so excited to have you here for our donor town hall today, our second in a series of conversations with you, our community members, our donors, our volunteers, and our supporters to help us give a chance to tell you how the work that you're doing is having an impact in our community. And that's really the goal today, is for us to be able to share stories and images of what you are helping do in the community through your volunteerism, through your support, through your time, through your financial donations. We want to be able to share that impact with you today. And moreover, we want to give a chance for you to ask questions of our team and for us to be able to answer them live here today. So the format for today's presentation, for the first 30 minutes or so, you're going to hear from two of our top leaders at Second Harvest Food Bank, Dave Krepcho, our president and CEO, as well as Karen Broussard, our Vice President of Agency Relations and Programs. And so the two of them will come on in just a moment and do a little bit of a back and forth conversation, talking to you about the work that is happening at the food bank and the work that's being facilitated because of your support. And then the second 30 minutes of today's presentation is really an opportunity for you to ask questions of our team and for us to be able to address the work that we're doing and any questions you might have about that work and how your support impacts that work. So you'll find you had the opportunity when you first registered for the town hall today to submit questions, and we've gone ahead and compiled those and have those ready to be able to be answered at the end of our presentation today. But we also want to give you the opportunity to ask us questions live. So you will notice at the bottom of your screen, if you're using Zoom on a computer, a tablet, or a phone, in your control panel at the bottom, there's a box called Q&A. That is for questions and answers. So we would encourage you throughout the presentation today, if you have a question, please go ahead and click on that box and type out that question for us. Some of those questions we're going to go ahead and save and answer live towards the second half of our presentation today. And others, we have a team of Second Harvest Food Bank members who are working behind the scenes today to help address your questions so that we can make sure we get to everybody's question and make sure we get it answered. So you may hear your question answered live today, or we may be typing out that answer to you for everybody to be able to see in that Q&A box throughout the presentation today. So with all that being said, I will be back with you in a little bit to address our Q&A. But I'd like to go ahead and bring Dave Krepcho, our president and CEO, to begin today's presentation.
Good morning, everybody. Hey, thanks so much for taking some time out for this. This presentation, unusual times bring on unusual types of communication, and I think this is I know it's a wonderful opportunity for us at the food bank to share some info, as Dan said, and I really want to thank you personally, each and every one of you, for your contributions. We would not be accomplishing this work without you. So deeply, deeply appreciated. I hope you and your loved ones and colleagues are safe and staying safe as we all work through this storm, so to speak. So thank you. Just a real quick overview on Second Harvest Food Bank. We exist to rescue all the surplus food that would go to waste, primarily. It's perfectly edible, and we get it to people in need. And we do that in the 6-county area of Central Florida here, in Orange, Osceola, Seminole, Lake, and Brevard counties, through a network of 550 different feeding partners. So it's very unique, but it's a very efficient and effective system to get food to people in need. Collectively, those partners with us are serving usually around 400,000 different people a year, believe it or not. During COVID, that number has gone up almost double, which is hard to believe. We're nearly 800,000 people in the six county area that need help. So, boy, if you ever wondered if your donations made a difference, they do, and you're going to hear some real specifics on that. In my 26 years of food banking around the country, in the past 16 here in Central Florida, I, like many of you, have been through the recession and seen the impact of that. have been um, involved with 9/11 relief, and the impact on our economy, floods, fires, hurricanes, all that. None of those compared to the amount of need. And you see, I think on the screen there, a aerial shot of a food distribution early on. This was done in late March. I think about 800 cars showed up, and we call it no-touch distribution. So it was highly organized with the city police and a bunch of volunteers respecting social distance, and people would drive through, open their trunks or back doors, and volunteers would put the food into their cars. When I was at this distribution and just watching this constant line of cars coming in, and behind every windshield, there was a unique story. I've seen many senior citizens that came through that line. I've seen a lot of grandparents with grandkids that are responsible for watching the grandkids in those minivans, and lots of families, couples. It resembled all of humanity, every color of skin, every ethnicity, different income levels, with all the high unemployment and low paying jobs, people struggling before the pandemic. It was just this constant stream, and most of them never seen themselves in this situation before. So quite humbling, quite stark. But I can tell you these stories, but I'd rather have someone tell their story. So we're going to show you a very, very brief video of one of thousands of individuals that have received help. Dan?
We have been utilizing now the Faith Neighborhood food pantry probably since late April. We are a special needs family, and during the pandemic, even though my husband was working, our monthly income did drop, and we utilized all of our savings, we utilized our credit cards, we utilized every resource that we had personally. Since we don't qualify for a lot of the extra programs that are out there, we as a family, didn't know where to turn. We have always volunteered, we've donated, we've given back in the past, and during this pandemic, we're now finding ourselves in a food insecurity, crisis. And we knew about Faith Neighborhood because we had volunteered and donated before, but we had never come here as a family ourselves because we've always been able to, take care of ourselves and do the things that we needed to do. But when you're furloughed and your hours get cut and you're not sure, what the next paycheck is going to look like, and after you pay your bills and different things that are happening, we realized we really needed help.
So, again, just one of tens and thousands of stories that are out there. Hope that gives you a little glimpse into it. I mean, there are coworkers, our neighbors, in some cases, family members as well. So, recent research on food insecurity in Central Florida, we were able to gauge the number of missing meals. And believe it or not, on a weekly basis in Central Florida during COVID, there are 310,000 missing meals. So that means we have to up our game, okay? We have to source more food and figure out really creative ways to get that out there. Another glimpse of trying to get a sense of demand, on our website homepage, there's a button that says Find Food. And we had that on there pre-pandemic, and we would average about 63 searches a day, which is a fairly high number. It's kind of sad. When mid-March hit, we were averaging 1,200 searches per day. And that held steady for about 3 weeks. It's gradually, coming down, but it's still extremely high and way above the levels to date. Since mid-March, we've received nearly 100,000 searches just on that tool. And that does not include the thousands of phone calls that we received as well. So what that translates into is us having to distribute so much more food. And on a daily basis, right now, we are providing enough food for 300,000 meals. You've heard the word unprecedented a lot during this pandemic, and I don't know if there's a more fitting number for that, but just absolutely unbelievable, the need. And we're not serving it all, but we're making a huge difference. And since mid-March, here's another number of the magnitude. It's hard to get your head around this. Since mid-March, that totals enough food for 24 million meals in Central Florida. That is not a national or statewide statistic. That is Central Florida. So with that, I want to change gears a little and introduce Karen Broussard, our Vice President of Agency Relations and Programs. And Karen, if you could make yourself visible and unmute yourself, that would be terrific.
Here we go.
And Karen, please talk about who's missing these meals. We saw that one short video, but if you could spend some more time on, it's all about the people, and just shed some light on the folks that are receiving it.
Yeah, happy to. Thanks, Dave. And thank you to everybody who is tuning in this morning. We're so glad that you could join us, and we're willing to take the time to do that. The people who are missing meals, are just, Dave already mentioned it, folks who are at work, people who've gotten furloughed, laid off, hours cut, in addition to the population of folks who we've always served, who, again, pretty much fall into that category of the working poor. But also, we can look at different groups of people, seniors, particularly seniors who are living alone and often don't have transportation. That's a group that's been particularly hard hit. We have children, for instance, children who live some distance from whatever their home school is. And if they live in a rural setting, or they live in a food desert, but for whatever reason, they and their family cannot get to a school that may be distributing one meal a day during the week as a grab and go to be able to help with the COVID response. We are working on ways to be able to get food to them, novel ways, because there is no other way for them to get food at the moment. So if you think about the disabled, folks who are living with disabilities and also, are very limited because of their income, limited in terms of their mobility and their access to food, we're really focusing on them as well. So these are people in terrific need, along with, for instance, our friend who you just saw the video of, who's, a hard-working person, just like many of us, who just has fallen on hard times through no fault of her own. One of the families that we ran into and have helped, and I'm really glad that we could do that, for instance, is a mom and dad who both worked at the airport. They were furloughed and now laid off early on in the pandemic. They have one child. And as a result, their income plummeted. They were unable to receive their unemployment benefits in any kind of a timely fashion. They got in touch with us. These are people who never, ever had thought that they would need assistance with food, but they did recognize that they didn't even, for instance, have gas to put in their car to be able to travel to get food. And so we've been able to help them through one of the innovations we've been able to put in place in this short period of time. So that's who's missing meals. I want to say that some of the ways that we're trying to offer relief at this time is through, lots of different methods. We all the way from assistance with SNAP applications, those are food stamp applications, and we now have multiple ways of doing that. We used to be in the field. It's a little unsafe to do that right now. So we are using a telephonic phone-based platform to be able to assist people with that. That network that Dave has mentioned of our 550 partner agency pantries across the 6 counties, that is really the big way that we are able to get food into people's hands. And that's what my team does. We are the folks at the food bank who are responsible for getting food into the hands of the people who need it most. We also have dozens and dozens of community partners and partnerships that we all work together to leverage our collective information, understanding, networks, to be also to be able to reach people in high need who we would never be able to do on our own. We work with the healthcare sector. That's one of our great partnerships. We work with the schools so that we're supplementing those meals that they are, getting to some children while those kids are not in school, because we know so many children do rely on their breakfast and lunch for school 5 days a week from school. Let's see, the way we do it, we use a lot of data, we use a lot of mapping, so we're very precise and specific about understanding where the need is and who has the need. But a really big thing about the way we work is that we create relationships wherever we go, and those relationships are the things that really enable us to have the impact that we want to be able to have for people who are really in desperate straits. So that's a lot of information. We're grateful to be able to do the work, but now I want to sort of throw it back to Dave and let him talk about the larger organization of Second Harvest Food Bank and what we're doing in response there. Dave, you can unmute yourself. There you are.
Back again.
Yeah.
Thanks, Karen.
Mm-hmm.
What are we doing overall in response? We go on for hours about that, but we won't. But it's interesting times that about half of our staff is having to work remotely or virtually, and that brings on challenges. But we've managed to stay strong, which is really, really important. Our operations staff, cannot work remotely, to drive trucks and unload trucks and fulfill orders and all that and do deliveries. They have to stay at the ground level, and they've been doing just a stellar job through all of this. Volunteerism, maybe some of you are volunteers, no doubt some of you are. And at the end of March, volunteering, really almost disappeared, and understandably so. But I am amazed and thankful for the amount of volunteers who have come back, and we're able to practice social distancing because of the size of our facility, mandatory of wearing masks. Every volunteer and every staff member on a daily basis is having their temperatures taken. And we've consulted with Advent Health, with one of their infectious disease specialists, one of their doctors on staff, to just share with them what we're doing about it, or is there anything more that we can do? So we're ensuring safety for all. Some of the staff, unfortunately, were infected, but we believe they were infected outside of the facility, but everybody is safe. They self-quarantined, a couple were hospitalized, but everybody's doing well, thank goodness. So that remote piece is really a challenge, continues to be. We've basically doubled the volume of our distribution. And I mentioned that number of enough food for about 300,000 meals per day. To get your head around that kind of number, if you think of the Amway Center, right, in a sold out game or a sold out concert, Imagine that Amway Center being filled 15 times a day and providing a meal to everyone in those seats. That's what 300,000 meals a day looks like. So we do that, how we do this stuff and how we make it possible. In our culture statement, we mentioned innovation and innovation prior to the pandemic, but this pandemic, as we can see in our lives or in our professional lives or around the country, or if you're in business or in any kind of industry, that innovation is absolutely critical. And I believe that those entities that step up and innovate, stay flexible, are going to do extremely well. And we have done our fair share of that. And this innovation, I'd like to say, is it's kind of like trying to change your flat tire on your car when you're going 70 miles an hour, okay? You don't have time to stop and take a breath. So I do want to kind of flip this back to Karen to highlight a couple of those innovations. And for you, well, as you're listening to this, again, a reminder that we are only able to do these kinds of things with your support. And you've made this possible. And it all translates into really impacting literally thousands of lives every week. Okay, so Karen, if you could give a couple of highlights on that.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Dave. Innovation has wound up being really one of the highlights of this really challenging time for us at the food bank, and all credit to phenomenal teams at the food bank to be able to make this happen, and couldn't do it without your donations. I mean, that really frees us up to do things that we couldn't do in normal times. So a couple of things beyond, that large network, which is a big deal in the 6 counties. The first thing that we did was we recognized that our pantries themselves would be, their volunteers, their staff, and the people they were serving would be at risk if we used the same model we had always used, where people got online outside a pantry at the time it was open and then walked in to get their food. So we were able to flip that model really quickly into a sort of a mobile drive-through model using all pre-packed food, which is very different than what we had done before. We had been doing what we called mobile drops for quite a while, but by no means to the magnitude that we're doing them now. One of the things that's happened, I'm having weird things happen on my screen. I'm just going to keep going unless I hear differently. One of the things, what's interesting is prior to the pandemic, we would have, our agencies would be working with us to do in the neighborhood of about 20 mobile drops a month. At the moment, we're up to nearly 60. And that is to really be able to get food into people's hands while they also are staying safe. So food is put directly into their trunk. So that's one of our big innovations, and it happened literally turned on a dime with that. The other thing is, we have a production kitchen where we are producing meals in normal times for Head Starts, for after school programs for children. And we do it at a pretty high volume. In the summer when school is out, we flip to the summer food program where we produce in the neighborhood of 200,000 meals over the course of a 10-week period. Well, what the state was able to do was waive a lot of those rules and regulations, so we could go into sort of an early start on that and get food to children without a lot of the rules and regulations that might have been limiting at other times. And we were able to package those into 7-day meal packs, so the children and families could receive those. Another thing that we did using a similar model was what we're calling neighborhood deliveries, and really identifying, using mapping and data and other sources in the community, our community partners and our network of pantries, to be able to identify communities that otherwise would not have access to food. And we are also packing 7 days of meals per person for families in those areas, and we truck them out to them using refrigerated trailers so that they get a great high quality variety of food. And that's, made a huge difference for people who typically would not be able to get food because they're in remote areas or they're in food deserts or don't have transportation. And then the other innovation that we're very proud of and almost didn't see coming, a lot of things came together to make it happen, is a home delivery program. We always knew there was a need. We knew that through some of the work we've been doing with the healthcare sector in the community. And because suddenly various supporters and companies turned up, we have been able to build a home delivery program that essentially was delivering in the neighborhood of 15 meals a week prior to the pandemic. And that was only through our healthcare partnerships. Last week, we delivered 1,300 meals to people's doorsteps, no contact, great packages of food, produce as well. We're getting referrals from lots of different people, and we're in the process also, because we've had tremendous community support, we've been able to, we're in the process of building an app that will make it even easier for people to use and for us to even further increase the number of meals that can be delivered. And we're able to do this in all 6 counties. So that has been a huge shift for us, really needed in the community. Very, very proud of that. Some of the new partnerships that have shown up that we really weren't expecting are through companies like Amazon, through Lyft, through our emergency operations centers in various counties. Our cities and our county governments have also pitched in and been great participants in helping us get this work done in new ways. So we're really thrilled for that participation. We feel like we've been able to have greater impact as a result. So that said, I think that's, gives you a picture of some of the things that we've been doing over the last, 16, 17 weeks. Let me flip it back to Dave, and let's talk about maybe where all of this food is coming from.
Yeah, just real quickly, because I do want to get into the Q&A. That's the most interesting part. But the food is coming from a variety of sources, which is wonderful. It doesn't rely on any one company or category. But we could start with the federal government. They are doing some things very, very right. Through the U.S. Department of Agriculture, they're providing their USDA commodities in great volume and variety of foods and good quality of food. So we are really thankful for that effort. From the Florida Department of Agriculture as well, the food products that they've been providing to us to get out to the community. We are getting lots of food now, once again, from the grocery retailers like Sam's, Walmart, Publix, Winn-Dixie, Super Targets, you name it. At the beginning of the pandemic, those donations were almost disappeared, but they are coming back now because the whole food supply chain was kind of upside down and bogged down for a while. So we're also bringing in food from out of state from food manufacturers. And there's a cost to transportation for that, for sure, but it's absolutely vital to reach out. We're getting food from local wholesalers and distributors. At the end of March, when the theme parks closed down, such as Disney, they sent us 18 tractor trailer loads of wonderful food, incredible variety, because they weren't going to be serving their guests, for quite some time. So they had that inventory. So we were able to benefit from that. In addition, the local restaurants, unfortunately, just have taken and continue to take a huge hit. But again, at the beginning of the shutdown, they had coolers and freezers and pantries of their own that had lots of inventory and lots of food, but it would go to waste. So they decided to donate it. So that has really happened. Some community food drive, and we've had to purchase a lot of food through this disaster and continue to do so because the volume of donated foods is not enough. So we have to supplement that, and we go out and we buy by the tractor trailer load so we can purchase this food at very, very, very low cost. So that's just a quick sampling. This has all had an impact on our budget, and one of the things we take pride in at the food bank is one of our values, and that's stewardship, and that's stewardship of sources, of resources. So we watch every penny that goes through the facility and try to leverage that money as much as possible too. I believe you've heard through Karen talking a few different times about partnerships, relationships with other organizations and entities. And that's one of the key reasons why we can leverage every financial donation. So our budget for the next fiscal year, we started July 1st, our fiscal year, will basically double in size due to COVID. As we look ahead to the future, nobody has a crystal ball on what's going to happen with this pandemic and the recovery, but based on a lot of research, a lot of outside information, and food industry information as well, we're in this for the long haul. This is not a sprint. This is definitely a marathon that we have to stick with. So, to kind of change gears again, one of the questions I wanted to answer was that you might be thinking is, what is our biggest challenge as an organization? And that has changed during the pandemic. The biggest challenge right now is keeping our staff strong and keeping our staff safe. They have, when I say doubling our distribution, and those hundreds of thousands of meals a day, that takes a toll physically, and it takes a toll from a stress point of view as well. So we're trying to do some things internally to make things more livable and more feasible, but my biggest concern really is sustainability in a couple of ways, and sustainability of our staff strength to keep whole, and to keep at this and to take care of themselves as well. And sustainability just in terms of other resources such as food, may it keep flowing. So that is critical. And then sustainability of financial resources as well. You all have been so incredibly generous, and we truly appreciate that, and just hope you're in it for the longer run with us. So Karen, I want to go back to you. Make yourself visible and audible.
I am here.
So that's kind of our biggest challenge. Well, what do you think is our single biggest opportunity? Because that always exists.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would have to say the opportunity has already sort of revealed itself in terms of the innovation that we're doing, that I've already talked about at length. And this gives us an opportunity as a food bank to sort of demonstrate just how diverse we can be, how efficient we can be, and how our relationship building continues. And we can continue to look at not just food, but what are all of the other connection points that allow us to help people with food, and how does that then help them with their health, and how does that then help them sustain their ability to begin to work when that's available, that they can take care of their children more easily and keep them healthy as we all struggle through the school dilemma. And there are many, many points at which the people we serve have really serious needs, and those relationships and partnerships and the innovation have all brought us closer together. For instance, even with our housing folks in the community, And so we're looking at all of those things. And I think that is our greatest opportunity, that this really challenging time has offered a sort of a playing field or a sandbox. If I'm going to use cliche, a sandbox that we all can be playing in effectively with far less, how shall I say, administrative limitations that we do in normal times. I think that's our greatest opportunity.
Thank you.
Probably said too much there. But
Okay.
Dave, back
Just
to you.
watch your corner of the sandbox and play nice.
Okay. I
Okay.
think we can do that.
So, one thing just before Q&A, we get into that, it kind of begs a lot of questions, but one of the key ones is, what has this shown us as a community, as an organization, about our community in Central Florida? And I go back years. I went through Hurricane Andrew in South Florida and was in the midst of relief work there, and came across a saying one day that says, very simple, 3 words. I'll never forget it. Crisis reveals character. You think about that in other people's lives that have shown that, or in your own life. And what we see is that it's one of two opposites. It brings out the best in people or it brings out the worst in people. There doesn't seem to be a lot of middle ground. But fortunately, the glass is more than half full. You all, as part of the Central Florida community, are just incredibly generous. But the other thing that it's shown us, and we saw signs of this pre-pandemic, and once this pandemic calms down, we want to get back into this kind of line of work where we have to, as nonprofit organizations or nonprofits in local government or private industry and individuals, we have to start working together more. Lots of great people and great organizations doing good work, but for a large part doing it individually. But I think the magic to really move the needle on helping people in need is to work together more systemically or more holistically around this population that we're helping. Because we all primarily are helping these folks, whether it's education, it's housing, getting them jobs, or healthcare, whatever it is. They just don't have one issue. They have multiple issues. So I hope that's something that's being learned by a lot of us, to let's break down the silos and start working together much more so. So we've been doing more and more of that. Karen mentioned just a few new partnerships. I think in total we've had at least 5 or 6 dozen additional new partners. And some of those will become lifelong like-minded souls and friends of the mission. And likewise to their missions too. So Dan, with that, I want to turn it back to you to kind of tee up the Q&A.
Wonderful. Well, Dave and Karen, first off, thank you. You did a great job of sharing our story with everybody in the community, and really for allowing us to understand the work that the food bank is doing and how our donors and our partners are a big part of that. So all of you have done a great job of submitting questions throughout today. You figured out how the Q&A box works, so we really appreciate that. We ask that you keep them coming. In the bottom of your screen there is that box that says Q&A. If you have a question, please feel free to add it to that Q&A box, and we will either answer it live right here today in the next 20 minutes or so, or our team behind the scenes has also been typing out answers to a number of you who asked great questions throughout the session today. So we really appreciate that. So for Dave and Karen, our first question, and this one was submitted by probably about a dozen folks ahead of time in various forms. Our constituents really want to know more about volunteering. So can you talk about some of the precautions that Second Harvest is taking to ensure the safety of our volunteers and how somebody might be able to go about signing up to be a volunteer?
Sure. I touched on it a little earlier in the presentation about volunteerism. So the precautions that we're taking, if you want to volunteer, you can go to our website, feedhopenow.org, or just the ever popular Google, put in Second Harvest Food Bank of Central Florida. And we make it very easy for you to sign up online, or you can call in as well. But on the online sign-in, we will ask a few questions about, have you suffered from COVID? Those kinds of basic health questions. That's just really important as part of a screening. And once we provide a time slot for you in a day, those kinds of things, as I said earlier, when you come in to sign in, your temperature will be taken, and a couple of basic questions. Masks are mandatory. We have hand sanitizers throughout the facility. We have an additional cleaning crew that is working every single day through the day, just wiping down surfaces, door handles, all that kind of thing. So we make it safe as possible. And then when you go out to your assignment, we have staff embedded with you to provide orientation and to make it a really productive experience. I was just walking out there this morning, and there's a big crew out there. We got music blasting, and I didn't want to go back to the office. I wanted to hang out there. It looked like a lot of fun. But they're respecting the social distancing issue. So those, lots of precautions. If anybody's got any ideas and whatever else we could do, we'll do. But it's worked out really well. We can't do our work without volunteers. So it's just wonderful to see people coming in day by day.
Thank you, Dave. So you talked about volunteering as a great way to get involved, and we certainly had a lot of questions about other ways to get involved. So can you talk a little bit about our advocacy efforts, and in particular about SNAP and what's going on with SNAP right now, and how our constituents who are joining us today can really help the work that we're doing by just submitting something very easily while sitting at home right now?
Right. Advocacy is can be kind of a broad term, but basically I just boil it down to really trying to represent the needs and desires of the population that we serve. Because a lot of them do not have a voice in Washington, D.C. or Tallahassee, Florida, or maybe at the mayor's office here locally. So part of our role is to share their collective voices to these elected officials. And currently, right now, there's a federal policy that's being talked about for SNAP, or previously food stamps. And that is to provide some additional money to those beneficiaries. That is just super critical. SNAP is never enough to live on in terms of food. It provides less than $2 a meal for folks, okay? And, if you ever gone shopping and try to record that, eat, a decent diet on that, it's not possible. So the S in SNAP is supplemental, it doesn't cover everything. But for you to chime in, we would love your collective voices added to this, because we do talk to the elected officials in Washington, in Tallahassee, and at the local government level. It is just critical that they hear what their constituents are feeling, are experiencing, So on our website, again, if you go to our website, you will find a spot where you can lend your voice to some of these issues. So it's around advocacy or government relations, but you will find on our website an area for this advocacy for SNAP that we're talking about to increase the value of that during these times. And we make it real easy for you. You could do it electronically to an elected official, or you can choose to pick up the phone and call an elected official. But the more they hear, the more they pay attention. And I remember talking to one elected official in Washington, and he said, Well, if I get a couple calls, we get a couple calls, my staff members will acknowledge that. But if I start getting maybe a dozen, 20 calls on something, I'll start paying attention. And if I start getting hundreds of calls or letters, we're really going to look at this. So it's kind of like, the squeaky wheel gets the grease kind of thing, unfortunately, but it works. And we've been doing this for years, and it influences politicians. There are a lot of great people in government. The news might show us a little bit of a slanted version of it, but there's a lot of fine individuals. Thank God they're in those roles serving. Unfortunately, they're in a screwed up system, but that's American democracy, and we have to keep working at that. So we have an opportunity to speak up. One time when I was in Washington, I had a chance years ago to testify to Congress on a hunger relief issue. And it struck me as I walked into that hearing room, they're all sitting up 7 feet above you in these giant leather back chairs, and you're down at a little folding table in a fold-up chair with a microphone in front of you. And it struck me, what a great country we live in, that we actually have access to these officials and we can have a voice. It might be small at times, but it makes a difference. So please join us in this. We provide information on the issues so you can understand the importance. And don't be afraid to call somebody. We do provide those numbers, because that legislator is not going to answer the phone. Okay. They're a little busy in other things, but their legislative aides do, and they record these. And they record it as a phone call or as an email or a letter. There's nothing more ideal than a letter or a face-to-face conversation. They need to hear from us. Sorry to go on a little long on that one. I could go on a lot longer, but one final thought on that. To end hunger in the United States and in Central Florida, you have different levers that you could pull, okay? And do you pull the lever of more refrigerated trucks and more food to get food to people? Yeah, you got to do that. Do you create a new innovative program and pull that lever? Yeah, you got to do that. But if there's the biggest lever, most powerful lever that you could pull is around public policy. Sounds kind of boring at times, but we got to get out and vote, and we all have to reply to the census. The census drives literally billions, hundreds of billions of dollars to the states. And, they take that data and they allocate funding to states according to those. So those are the biggest levers we can pull. So, please participate in those things. Ken?
Thank you, Dave. Clearly a passion, an area of passion for you, and we certainly appreciate you sharing that on behalf of the food bank. Karen, a question specifically for you. We've received a number of questions in advance as well as in our chat box today about schools reopening and how that's going to impact both the free and reduced lunch program at schools, as well as some of our programs, our school market programs and our backpack programs, where we're providing produce and fresh and canned goods for our students. So can you talk a little bit about how we are working right now to innovate alongside the school system?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Dave. I mean, it's a concern. I don't think is it ever on people's minds. I have a 6-year-old granddaughter not in town, but I from afar am certainly understanding the decisions that have to be made now. So a couple things that are going on. In normal times, we address and supplement children's needs for food in multiple ways. We've been doing sort of a weekend backpack. We now call it kids packs for years and years and years to try and get food into the hands of children who really do rely on free and reduced breakfast and lunch at school. We do the summer food program. We're a large sponsor there. I mentioned that much earlier when I was speaking. And in addition to that, in the last, I would say 4 years, we have another sort of innovative program called the School Market Program that also is joined by the Fresh Market Program. And that actually addresses food insecurity and hunger for kids in high schools and middle schools when they've gotten old enough to really not want to be able to take free food home that somebody hands them. It gets embarrassing for them. So we've come up with a really successful model there that's sort of driven by students. In this time of the disruption of school, as everybody was accustomed to it, we've joined with as many school systems as we could to be able to supplement the food that children and their families can receive, either at the brick and mortar school site through a drive-through type of model like we're using with the pantries, or as I mentioned earlier, our innovations around neighborhood delivery and the early summer food program. Summer food is in full bloom at the moment though. We expect to be able to continue those. I have to say that the ability to do those really relied on waivers from our state agencies, which is driven by decisions from the USDA on the federal level. And there were some really great decisions made to enable that. We expect, however, the need for food for children to have a really long tail. And as we're discovering at the moment, I mean, I would never want to be in the shoes of a school official or administrator at the moment and trying, or a teacher, to have to figure out how to do school right now. I mean, at the moment, Orange County Public Schools, I think, has announced a 2-1-2 model that will have some children in school, half the children in school 2 days a week, flip that with another 2 days for the other half of the kids and 1 day at home, what they're calling, I think, that 1 day virtual. That is really going to have an impact on children who rely on the school for their meals 3 days a week. They're going to go without it, plus the weekend. So we are in a wait and see position to see what the schools actually wind up doing, and then we will then leverage both our resources financially, our resources with the state. We will do advocacy if needed around shifting or maintaining these loosened regulations that have allowed us over the last 4 months to get a lot of food into the hands of these kids and their families. And we will continue to monitor very closely what's going on there, which we are doing. So we're in a wait and see position, but we are poised to act as soon as we have an idea. We will continue what we're doing until that point in time. So that's really our response. And we are working with the school districts in all 6 counties, by the way. So that's where we are with that. We are keenly aware of children going without food and what the impact will be not only on their learning, but on their health. And it will have long-term implications into adulthood. So that's something we're very concerned about. I'll end it there because I could go on and on also.
Thank you, Karen. Yeah. You described perfectly our need to have to pivot as the school systems are figuring this out and being at the beck and call to be able to serve these kids as the need comes up. And we appreciate that. Mm-hmm. Dave, if you can come back on in video and sound, we have one last question for you. If you could please describe, we have so many supporters on our call today, so many folks who have donated, who have made gifts to allow us to do the work that we do. I would love for you to take a minute to help describe how their donations are being used, what those dollars are doing in the community, and how their funds help us operate to serve those who are in need. And Dave, I'll go ahead and start your video again as well.
Okay, great. Good to be back. You know, how we're utilizing your dollars, you know, I talked about leverage before, and it goes a long, long way. Some of you may realize already, but, you know, every time you donate financially to a charity, you might wonder, well, how far is that dollar really going? Does it get to the people in need? And we're audited every year, and our finances are looked at in depth, in detail. And our auditors provide us a few ratios every year. And year in and year out, I just want to share a couple with you. That for every dollar donated to Second Harvest Food Bank, we're able to distribute $9 worth of groceries. So it's a huge return on investment. And we're able to do that because of the incredible number of volunteers, donated food available to us, and a bunch of other reasons, in-kind resources in the community. The other thing is they give us an efficiency ratio, the auditors, and year in and year out, we're at a 97.3% efficiency ratio. And what that means is 97.3 cents of every dollar is going to feed people in need. So we're very proud of it, worked really, really hard at that. You know, the other thing I'd like to mention, you know, just in terms of, you know, leveraging and taking care, being stewards of the dollars. Some of you may be aware of Charity Navigator. They are the nation's #1 watchdog on charities, on how effective they are. And they have a rating system of no stars, 1 star, 2, 3, 4 stars, their highest rating. And year in and year out, we are receiving their 4-star, their highest rating possible. And a huge part of that goes to how efficient, you know, and effective we are, and also on transparency of information. So again, you know, just going back to our website, it's just all kinds of information there. You know, I remind myself, the staff, and the board from time to time that, you know, the dollars that we are receiving to do our mission, they are really not, it's not our money, it's the community's money, it's their goodwill, and they entrust us to do what's most impactful with us. So I can't thank you enough for that trust. I received a handwritten note with a financial donation. We love those when we do get them. It just brings on a whole nother dimension to the donation. And I want to read a real short one here right now. I think it's very kind of timely. But we're getting financial donations from people from every walk of life. So here's one from Robert. Robert, I don't know if you're on the call, but you'll recognize this note. It says, "Dear Dave, I started back to work again in mid-June, but won't see my first paycheck until tomorrow, just in time to pay my mortgage. But I do know there are many people a lot worse off than I am. I'm making this gift to help those who really need it. I know you can help them, Robert." You know, I just really want to thank all of you as we close in time here for the difference that you're making in literally thousands and thousands of lives. You know, every can of soup, box of cereal, box of pasta, peanut butter and jelly that we can get out to families through all these different ways that we've talked about, that makes a difference right then and there to those folks in need. You know, it's just such a basic need that we can provide. But thank you from the bottom of my heart for your support. You're making a difference. I know there's a lot of questions that were being asked, and most of them were being answered online behind the scenes, I know. But, you know, in the coming hours or days, if you have other questions that you have, please let us know. You know, we love to hear what's on your minds. So Dan, I'll turn it back to you to close up.
Dave, I think that was a perfect close. We are just so grateful for all of you for joining us today and for all that you do to help us fulfill our mission, to help us do this work that we do, whether it be financial donations or volunteering or advocating or being one of our partners. It's because of folks like you that we're able to continue to serve the community. So we are truly grateful. We're going to leave the webinar on here for just a minute or two so that the folks behind the scenes can wrap up answering the last few questions in that Q&A box. If you do have additional questions, you will get an email from me automatically tomorrow. with a survey, and please feel free to fill that out. And there's a spot in there for any additional questions we didn't get to today. We will have one of our team members reach out to you to answer those questions. And if you need any additional information about the work that we're doing, or if you're in need of assistance or you know somebody in need of assistance, the best resource is our website. That's feedhopenow.org. Dave, any final thoughts for us today?
Thank you. Keep safe.
Wonderful. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.